What's up, guys? Welcome to a new day. I'm Stephanie Ryder, and this is the 365 Shares podcast. It's January 29th, 2024, and this is the 29th episode of the 365 Shares podcast. Today's topic is blame, and the Big Red Book says we cannot reach the level of spiritual growth that we are seeking by blaming sick people. The passage in the Strengthening My Recovery book talks about the disease of alcoholism and family dysfunction and says we should shift away from blaming our parents or caregivers who raised us and understand that they have a disease and that they also were raised in alcoholism or other family dysfunction. And it's not talking about forgiving them necessarily. That is a part of the program, but that's not what it's really focusing on here. It's really saying we're shifting the focus away from blaming the people who hurt us, and we're putting that focus on ourselves where it belongs, where instead of living in the past, instead of playing a victim mentality, what we're doing is we're saying we're going to take all that mental energy and we're going to work on ourselves and we're going to heal. And if we have children or even grandchildren or just want to be healthier individuals, we can work to stop the generational trauma that we have inherited. It's Monday, and I usually go to ACA meetings on Monday, and I led the meeting tonight. So we do read from the Strengthening My Recovery book every week. And so I did get to read this affirmation today. And then I actually requested that the topic for today's meeting would be blame. So continuing on the affirmation topic, which we don't always do, but it was a topic that I didn't remember us covering in our book study meetings. And it actually was a really great one. We've had sort of a string of topics where, for no blame of the person who picked the topic, a lot of the readings just happen to be the same. If you think about it, there's a lot of overlap. If you're talking about grief, or you're talking about loss, or you're talking about, inner child or critical parent, those themes are recurrent in the book. So a lot of the terms in the glossary in the back of the book are applicable to multiple topics. But this was great. I didn't really remember hearing about any of these topics before. And the readings felt really unique. And it was like a really good meeting. And we got through all of the readings, which we don't always do. So it was just nice to have a topic with new readings. And we made it through the whole thing, which gives my OCD a sense of accomplishment. But I just enjoy it. I enjoy what the book has to say. And everyone seemed really inspired tonight by the readings. And there were some really good shares. And definitely there were some shares that helped me understand my family paradigm a little bit, because they're all so similar. We all think our families are so unique in our dysfunction, and we're so shameful about our families. We have the worst family, but we're honestly all kind of the same in our dysfunctional families. I mean, some are worse, some are better, but the themes are the same. So a lot of times I hear shares in the meeting that help me think oh, that reminds me of a family member, or oh, that's why that person does that. And it might be something someone's sharing about their family, or it might be something someone is sharing about things that they do. And I'm oh, that's something I do, or that's why that family member acts that way. So I think that's really interesting. But I really got to do a deep dive on blame tonight, and I feel like I learned a lot. I'm Steph, and this is my share. The affirmation for today is, on this day, I will do all that I am capable of to help stop the generational dysfunction in my family. In doing so, I will let go of any blame that is keeping me from experiencing greater levels of recovery. And I'm going to do something I haven't done before on the podcast. I'm going to read from the actual Big Red Book, a longer passage than just the snippets that we usually have on the daily affirmations page, because there was a really great story that I hadn't heard before in the book, and it's an analogy about generational trauma. And it inspired my share today, and it inspired a few other people to share. So I'm going to read a short passage from the book, and then I'm going to talk about it. The Big Red Book tells this story. On the horizon, we see the preceding generations of our family lined up in single file, stretching back for miles. There must be 100 generations or more. At the front of the line, we see our parents as children with their parents. We recognize our grandparents, but visualizing our parents as vulnerable children is a new experience for us. We notice the generations of our family passing forward a bundle. They move the bundle along by handing it off from one generation to the next. We watch as the bundle moves closer to our grandparents and to our parents. The bundle is heavy and gripped tightly as one generation hands it off to the next. The bundle is held at the stomach level as it is passed forward. We concentrate on the bundle and begin to recognize it. Our eyesight has been improved by our step work. We can see more clearly. We see our grandparents kneel down to give the bundle to our parents. As our parents receive the bundle as children, we understand what they have taken possession of. It is shame, abandonment, and loss from the ages. We think about what we have seen. We realize we don't have to take possession of the bundle. It is not ours. We are free. We look behind us, over a shoulder to a clear horizon. There are no families there yet. We realize we have a chance to interrupt the passing on of family dysfunction. And I like this story because it's nice to think of our generation all lined up on the hill as if it's a scene from a historic battle movie where there's like knights on the hill with flags and they're waiting to just run down the hill and start this big battle royale. It's also interesting to visualize your parents as children. And someone shared that they were reading in Tony A's book, and Tony A was one of the founders of ACA. In the book, it was talking about visualizing your inner child and then visualizing your parents' inner children and like having your inner child play with your parents' inner children as just a mental exercise. And how interesting that would be if you were really able to look at them as their original selves and as these blameless individuals who suffered pretty much the same things that you suffered and maybe worse. But this story in the bigger book talks about generational trauma as a bundle that we're just handing on. And while I like that, I think it sort of minimizes the difficulty it takes to not receive the bundle from your parents. In the book, it makes it seem like you can just say, no, thank you, and then everything will be fine. And you can just like go start a new generation of people and like without all this damage. But it really does take a lot of work to refuse the bundle. We have to question a lot of our family traditions. We have to say no to our parents when they're trying to suck us back into the way they like things to be. We have to do our own work. We have to find a sense of strength within us. We have to have support from other ACA members. So I feel like at the bottom of this hill, you have to have all the ACA members who are currently doing their work, like linking arms together, who are standing up to this bundle. And in my mind, it's not just a heavy sack that we're handing off. It's like catapults of big rocks that they're hurling at us. And we somehow have to do our Care Bear stare and like deflect and dismantle all of this trauma that's coming at us like weapons, like it's violent coming at us. And one of the other members shared that she had sort of a similar feeling where it felt like the trauma was getting microchipped in you. Like if you're a dog and you have to like dig out the chip and not only throw it away, but destroy it, which then reminded me of the Matrix when he has that mechanical bug thing injected into his stomach and then they have to like suck it back out and it's really painful. And that starts him on his whole journey of figuring out what the Matrix is and challenging the establishment. Maybe mentally, you can just meditate on a nice vision of like a field of flowers and you politely saying like, no, thanks. I don't want that 20-pound sack of flour. I'm good. Like I'm gluten-free. Like, no, thank you. But in reality, I think it does take a lot of work. But that's not to say that it's not valuable. And I think one of the things I shared also was it just takes the right person in the family to be not only willing, but also able to shoulder this burden of stopping generational trauma. And it takes the right timing for it to happen. So anyone who is in recovery, anyone who's in therapy, anyone who has found this podcast, anyone who's going to meetings, you are like a Marvel superhero. These generations have been waiting for hundreds, maybe thousands of years for you to come along and figure out a better way to do things and do it in a non-judgmental way, in a loving way, with support from other people who are going through the same process. All your cast of superheroes that we have, like our Marvel series of ACA superheroes. And that would be like a really cute cartoon book to have, like recovery superheroes all banding together to stop family dysfunction. But if you're doing this work, then I'm with you. I know that it's hard. I know that it can feel really lonely. I know it sometimes feels like you're breaking your family up instead of fixing it. And people in your family might tell you that you're making things worse. But if you stick with your program, if you work the steps, if you have a therapist, if you have support of your fellow travelers, then just keep going. Because if you think you're on the right track, you're on the right track. And listen to what the universe has to tell you and stay strong and do your healing and just focus on this clean slate of future generations that you will get to influence in a positive way.